Good morning, Vietnam!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family.
Here's Johnny!
Whoa, this is heavy. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Working on my day off.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Showtime with Roman podcast, the not-so-feature-length podcast where I, your host, Roman RBC, talks about film, news, trailers, previews, reviews, discussion topics, all that and more here on this week's episode of the Showtime with Roman podcast. And today, again, it is just me, myself, and I, and no guests because, again, it usually runs very long, longer than anticipated, because we just love talking about movies, and it just takes very long to upload. So now, if I'm just on by myself, quicker uploads, I don't have to worry about scheduling a time, and I can get it uploaded pretty quick in comparison to longer episodes. So this week, I'm going to go over one news topic because it's been a pretty slow news week. I'm going to review Black Klansman and The Meg, preview Mile 22, starring Mark Wahlberg and directed by Peter Berg, and maybe I'll preview Crazy Rich Asians, even though it's already released and I'm seeing it this weekend. I cannot wait. And then I will bring up one discussion topic that we can talk about in the comments below or on Facebook, Twitter, wherever else you may be seeing this video. So first things first, it looks like director Wes Anderson's next film will reportedly be a post-World War II musical. Anyone that knows me, anyone that's been listening to the podcast knows that Wes Anderson, his style really isn't for me. Fantastic Mr. Fox, great film. Grand Budapest Hotel, incredible film. Isle of Dogs was okay. Didn't like Rushmore. Couldn't finish Royal Tenenbaums. That's pretty much it. But he's arguably, and me personally, I would consider him the best at utilizing foreground, middle ground, and background in this era. It is obviously a little, it's not very subtle in the way that he utilizes it, but his style is so niche. It's so beautiful. The way that the camera moves, the way that it sets up shots. He goes for these very quirky worlds, and he usually delivers them in really beautiful ways with lots of beautiful color palettes. His films are very distinct, looking from one another, and he's got one of the most interesting filmographies ever. And now that he's possibly adding a musical to his list, like a full-fledged musical, music has played a part in a lot of his films, especially The Life Aquatic, apparently. I haven't seen it, but that's what everyone tells me. And but now that he's going full-fledged musical, it's really interesting, and I'm really curious to see what he's going to do, not only from a musical standpoint, but post-World War II. So I'm interested to see what characters are in it, what they're going to be singing about. Maybe there's some digs at Hitler in there. I know that recently we've been getting a lot of films about that era in American history. Taika Waititi's film is coming out, and I'm very interested to see what he's going to do with that. He's playing Hitler himself. And so what's going to happen is that it's expected to begin filming sometime this year or possibly early 2019. He usually takes a pretty decent amount of time between one film and another, so it seems rare to just see a film come out so recently and then have him just start working on another one. But maybe he's just in the zone right now and he's ready to go direct this thing, write it. And he's been on location, I believe, in France is what I'm reading here on Screen Rant, southwestern France, preparing for the upcoming shoot. So that's pretty much it. I know that a lot of you are big fans of Wes Anderson. I know that his style, again, isn't for everybody, but are you excited for Wes Anderson's post-World War II musical? And it's one of the interesting things is that a lot of people think he doesn't do female characters well. He doesn't work with female actors very well, but he brings in a great cast 9 times out of 10. I know that Jeff Goldblum, he wanted to be in a Wes Anderson film so badly, he just made a phone call, and they recorded his voice over a phone call and put it in the film. So it's kind of incredible just how much people love working with him. He seems like a genuinely great guy, and I'm curious to see the cast and the actors that he gets in this film. I'm really excited about that because he always puts together a beautiful cast. So I'm excited for the most part, even though Isle of Dogs was a little disappointing. So that's pretty much it for news. Again, there's really been nothing else coming out this week. Steve McQueen's second trailer for Widows also came out, which looks just incredible. If you have not seen any Steve McQueen films outside of 12 Years a Slave, which most of you have probably seen, Hunger, Shame, incredible films. See them when you can. Very powerful, very moving, very dark, very depressing. But man, what a director. Beautiful, beautiful director. So, next thing, I saw BlacKkKlansman last week on Thursday. I can't believe it's been a week already. Very excited for it, and it lived up to the expectations. It was just a very powerful film, full of brash visuals, and it made me, as a white person, feel very complicit to a lot of the current event ongoings that we see every day, specifically a year ago in Charlottesville. And it's an incredible film. It's not subtle, but it's unsubtle in all the right ways, where, a lot of the times people are like, oh my gosh, directors should be subtle in what they're trying to say. When you've got a director like Spike Lee, who's very vocal, and we all pretty much know his personality. Even if you don't know Spike Lee, you know Spike Lee. And he's very revolutionary type, and no one's really safe from criticism, I think, in BlacKkKlansman. I think a lot of people have somehow misinterpreted what Spike Lee was going for. Maybe even I have. It's possible. But I think that when you look at the characters, and they're not really characters, they're based off of real people, they're all kind of caught in the crosshairs in their own regard. They're all kind of dealing with their own personal dilemma from their own perspectives. You've got Adam Driver's character, Flip, who's a white Jewish man, and he plays the role of the real Ron Stallworth when he goes to these Ku Klux Klan meetings in their local chapter, and he's dealing with his own personal dilemma in confronting his faith and the reality that surrounds him with the KKK. And then you look at Ron Stallworth, obviously being a black man in that era, specifically a cop. He's the first black cop at the Colorado Springs Police Department. And he has to face adversity there, but he gets the job done. And, he has major balls to just call the Ku Klux Klan and be like, say that he's a white guy, all hail white America, stuff like that. It is incredibly powerful, incredibly heroic for him to do that. He's a true American hero. He embodies everything great Americans should stand for, and that's, infiltrating hate and stopping all these hate crimes from going on, and breaking down barriers, breaking down walls, and creating bonds between people that you never thought you would have before, and creating bonds between your own people. And I think that's really beautiful. What Spike Lee does is he parallels and mirrors our reality so well, not only in just very unsubtle dialogue, but the way that the film looks, and specifically the way the characters are dressed, and the things that they talk about, and the things that they do with their actions. It's pretty traumatizing in a way, I believe, for a lot of people after the film had ended. I didn't get a chance to see it with anyone, and I really wanted to so I could have a brief discussion with them. But I turned around to the audience member behind me and I said, what did you think? And she is a huge Spike Lee fan. She said sometimes she doesn't agree with Spike and what he has to say, but she thought that he did a really great job in bringing the film together and really mirroring our own society. And then I asked her to recommend me some Spike Lee films that I should prioritize, and she told me that Crooklyn, even though not a lot of people are fans of Crooklyn, and Do the Right Thing are absolute must-see. So I'll be working on those in the near future, because BlacKkKlansman really blew me away. And the only other Spike Lee film I've seen is Inside Man. BlacKkKlansman, one of the best films of the year. Incredible performances. Denzel Washington's son, John David Washington, who plays Ron Stallworth. Incredible job. Keep your eye out for him. He is got his dad's genes. He delivers an incredible performance. And a lot of the actors in the film, too, they play the Ku Klux Klan members, and they are all great. They're all terrible, people. Their characters are, but they did a great job. Spike Lee really brought it together, and I can understand why it might not work for someone, and there's going to be a lot of people that hate the film purely because of the last 5 minutes. But, just like John Doe said in Seven, you can't just tap people on the shoulder anymore. Sometimes you got to hit them in the face with a brick. And that's what Spike Lee does. Incredible film, one of the best of the year. And then the following day, I saw John Turteltaub, director of National Treasure 1 and 2, Ultimate Guilty Movie Pleasures, The Meg, the nice shark movie of the summer. It seems like we're getting one or two of these every year now. They're trying to capitalize still on that Jaws hype from 1975, and yet, here we are, another shark film that just doesn't quite do it. I loved The Shallows a couple years back. I thought that was a really great condensed, confined personal drama with Blake Lively and a shark. It was one of the better films of that year, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that more people didn't like it. I actually double featured that with Secret Life of Pets, so it was Sharks Aren't Pets, but it was a very animal-filled evening, and The Shallows was really, really entertaining, I thought, and I thought Blake Lively delivered a great performance. But The Meg, on the other hand, it just has a myriad of cast members from not only is it a very diverse cast, which is great, but the problem is that the characterization is lacking. There's nothing really under the surface. They all kind of drown under the pressure of this ginormous behemoth of a shark. And to be honest, the first 90 minutes are really uneventful. They try and make it eventful, but it never amounts to anything. You kind of know what's going to happen, and it's kind of dumb. I understand that you're kind of signing up for a dumb shark movie, and I understand that, but there's just nothing fun about it, and you don't believe that any of this would actually happen. And the way they explain the shark getting out of the area that it's in originally at the start of the film is so mind-numbingly stupid. You can make fun films, but you can do it by having it make sense and making characters believable, and the Meg doesn't do that. One of the best parts of the movie is the finale. I think the third act is quite good. I actually kind of enjoy it. I think you get everything that you signed up for. It's silly, it's ridiculous. You've got shark doing things, you got people dying, but honestly, it's just kind of boring. I don't like using that word when describing a film, but I was sitting there and I was like, wow, it's really uneventful. Nothing is really amounting to anything. Action sequences are boring. Sometimes you can't tell what's going on. The first sequence in the film, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to edit it the way they did, but the way it's pieced together, it doesn't even make sense. You can't even tell what's happening, and they try and give some character depth to Jason Statham, who he's fine. He's got a pretty good screen presence, but the movie is ultimately everything I hate about studio filmmaking. It's a film that tries to appeal to the largest market possible, international market, by making characters from a specific section of the world, only to have them speak in subtitles briefly and to just underwrite them. And then the finale takes place in this overseas somewhere else, and it's just to appeal to that market, and that's all they want to do. There was a shot early on in the film. I think it's one of the first 15 to 20 shots of the film. There's a shot of a Nike shoe that looks like it's straight out of a shoe commercial. So you instantly kind of know what you're getting, but at the same time, it's like, just because you kind of understand what they're going for, they think they're having fun, but it's just annoying. And in my review, the final sentences, I was like, it's basically the filmmaking equivalent to being at your local pool and a 5-year-old toddler continuously splashing you in the face. They're having fun, but you're getting annoyed by it pretty quickly. And that's pretty much the best way to sum up The Meg. Not a good film. I didn't like it. There's a couple sequences I liked. It's got some decent jokes here and there, but overall, it just never really came together for me. So it kind of just sinks and drowns under the surface. So that's my brief review for The Meg and Black Klansman. Go ahead and check those out if you haven't seen them. I would highly recommend seeing a great film and then seeing The Meg and remembering just how much you should cherish great filmmaking like Black Klansman. So on to the discussion piece for the final segment of the day. So last week, after I'd seen Black Klansman and The Meg, Black Klansman basically reinforced everything that I loved about filmmaking. Its ability to mirror our own society, make me feel like I've learned something, make me feel like I can reflect on myself and the reality in which I live. And a lot of the times when I talk to people, they watch films purely as escapism. And if you do, that's okay. But for me personally, if you're trying to get into the film industry and you're trying to get into the space by being a critic, I think it's really important that if you're one of those people that is trying to dive deeper into the industry, is to recognize that watching film purely as escapism, it kind of defeats some of what film and cinema was always intended to be. Like Black Klansman, it's very provocative. It intends to, hit you in the face with a brick and kind of annoy some people in a certain demographic of moviegoers, right? But watching it purely as escapism, because escapism, the definition of it is essentially taking a break from the harsh realities in which we live, going out and doing something that gives us a break from all the hardships. The definition right here: the tendency to seek distraction and relief from unpleasant realities, especially by seeking entertainment or engaging in fantasy. So, film being the medium that it is, right? You've got films like Star Wars, fantasy film, not sci-fi. That's a conversation for another day. You've got a fantasy film like Star Wars that still, even though it takes place on planets we've never seen, with races and species that we've never seen before, and has lightsabers and flying ships and people breathing in space, whatever, right? It's still a story, the original trilogy especially, that is about, the Empire representing the Nazi-occupied Germany and wanting to get rid of people that don't belong and wanting to sort of commit this sort of genocide, right? And kind of just control the galaxy. And then you've got films like Lord of the Rings, which is based off of source material that was written in the 1930s, post-World War I, where you can, basically contribute the fact that the Fellowship that is trying to get this ring into Mordor basically represents the Allied forces during World War I, and that the orcs in Mordor basically represent the Axis forces, and they're trying to defeat them, through coming together as an allied force. So film always represents our reality. In film, and when we go into a film, the reason we connect with something is because of our reality. Because we're real, obviously, when we have real human emotion and real feelings, and we accentuate that and how we talk to people and what we do and what we love. And as film fans, I think that watching films purely as escapism on a surface level, just like that's the only thing that you watch film for, then you're kind of defeating some of what film is about. Because it is about mirroring our reality, having us reflect, learn about the world, learn about ourselves. And it's one of the most beautiful things about the medium. And I got into a humongous argument. Not an argument, more so a discussion. Some people were obviously a little taken aback by it, and I got a little antsy sometimes with it. But I'm so passionate about the topic because I think that if people go into film and watch it and recognize that there are films out there that, it's important to realize that they reflect our society, and we can't really take it as escapism. Because if we go to film to just escape the unpleasant realities, it kind of doesn't make sense, simply because the film represents our reality, and it reflects that, and it mirrors that. And I think there could be a better word choice out there, but I don't think the word escapism applies. And that's kind of my perception of it. And I think that when we go into a film, and why people connect with Manchester by the Sea, for example, is because of their reality, the things that they face, the things that, they go through. And obviously that might be a poor example of what escapism can be in film. But at the same time, there are people out there that go to film and watch it as escapism. But if those are people that go to the movies every week just to, have a good time, spend $8 and see two hours of film, that's fine. If that's the type of audience member they are, that's okay. That's not an issue. But I think that when it comes to being a film critic and when it comes to wanting to go further into the industry, you can't just watch film as escapism. Because then when it comes to writing your reviews, you're going to be talking about it as just, this escapism, fun, jokes, laughter, adventure, when you have to contribute our own personal response to a film and our own personal reality and what we're able to contribute to the discussion. It's the most beautiful part about film to me. And I think that it's something that we can all learn something from. So what say you on the topic? I'm genuinely curious. I pretty much know where everyone's going to fall. I've talked to a lot of film friends who have been watching movies, thousands of movies, and they write for websites. I talked to one of my friends, and he was telling me that he's actually writing an article about how movies are more than escapism. And then I talked to another one of my friends. I talked to Mikey. He was on one of the podcast episodes. I was talking to him, and he was telling me that the same thing. He says he doesn't really like when people just watch movies purely as escapism and look at it that way, simply because there's so much more under the surface. And for me, I don't want audience members to cheat themselves out of a worthwhile experience. Because if you're watching something to check these boxes of, is it funny, are the characters likable, does it have a good plot, premise, narrative structure, all that stuff, if you look at it on the surface level, then I think in some ways you might be cheating yourself out of a truly rewarding experience, figuring out more about yourself, figuring out what you love, why you act the way that you do, why you might be in a rough patch, stuff like that. It's what's so incredible about film, and I think that we all, even if we intend to see movies as escapism, there's this implicit human and real connection to the film, because there's this conduit of energy that you can't see, that's not tangible, between you and the screen. It's why Arrival is one of my favorite films of all time, because it's directly about the cinematic going experience and the way that each director has their own cinematic language and how they can connect with people and speak with people with their own language, and we can connect with that and apply it to our own reality. And that's why Arrival is one of my favorite films, because it embodies everything I love about film. Not only are the characters good, and is the directing great, and the cinematography especially, Johan Johansson's score, stuff like that. So what say you? Again, I really want to get your opinion on this. I think it's really important to talk about. And again, I know where everyone is probably going to fall on this, but just to maybe offer up a little more perspective. You can watch films as escapism, but if you think you're trying to get into the industry and critically analyze film on a deeper level, I don't think you can really watch it as these films that are just escapism. I think you're really cheating yourself and really preventing yourself from writing beautiful words about a beautiful film. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Showtime with Roman podcast. I'm actually working on a big article right now. I'm working on Martin Scorsese First Reformed and the Complications of Faith. I made a post about it on my Facebook recently. It's going to be separated into 3 acts. I was originally going to release it as one giant article, but I figured I'd make it more concise and a little more focused by releasing it in 3 acts and spacing it out, just so that you're not bombarded with information overload from my personal past and my opinions on a filmography and how that affected my life, and how First Reformed is one of the best films of the year, and it perfectly embodies my distancing from the Catholic faith and stuff like that. So it's going to be separated into 3 parts. So keep an eye out for that. I'll link it to one of the podcast episodes whenever I finally upload that. I'm almost done with the first act right now, and then I'll be starting the second act once I delve into Martin Scorsese's filmography a little more, because I've seen a good portion of his films, but I've only seen him once outside of The Departed, which I've seen twice. So I need to really get back into that. Got to rewatch Silence. I got to see Last Temptation of Christ. I'm going to watch Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, all that stuff. And then First Reformed comes out on Blu-ray, so I'm going to be watching that again next week, and probably again, just to make sure it's completely fresh in my mind when I'm writing. So I'm working on my Mad Max and Seven Samurai script as well. I'm sort of in the zone on this Martin Scorsese article, so I'm going to be focusing a lot of my energy on that. And then nothing else. I'll be back next week. I'm seeing Mile 22. I know I said I was going to preview it, but I simply don't have enough time, and my Audacity is being a little clunky. So if you notice some inconsistencies in tone and editing, you know why. My Audacity is just being a complete jerk to me today. So I'll do my best to edit it to make sure it's a streamlined and focused effort. This is once again Roman with the Showtime with Roman podcast, the not so feature-length podcast. Keep on going to the movies, keep watching film, and let me know down below. Can film be considered escapism? Have a nice weekend.